All right. So the next stuff that we want to talk about in terms of our principles and history um, of physical education, recreation, exercise, all that good stuff is um, the motor development. So we've learned about the demographics, we've learned about um, designing your own philosophy and the history of physical education, how we got to where we are now. And so now we need to look at the physical, tangible ways that we go about making these changes. In the book, we get a three chapters really that talk about the main way that we go about doing this. We start with motor development. Very briefly, with motor development, what we're looking at is a taking basically the athlete, student, child, whoever, through the proper stages of motor learning or learning a skill. And so the process is fairly straightforward. In our book, we talk about the differences between non-locomotor versus locomotor skills. Non-locomotor skills, being things like bending, stretching, twisting, pushing, pulling, swinging, all of those things. Whereas locomotor skills are using our um, putting these together, like catching, throwing, hitting a ball. That we get into manipulative skills, which is like striking the ball and making detailed, specific movements. So taking the fundamental elements and combining them all together into a manipulative skill. So that being said, we go through different stages of learning um, in terms of our movement patterns, the initial stage, the elementary stage, and the mature stage. And these are simple processes that everyone goes through. So, for example, you might have an infant who picks up a ball and throws it, just kind of flips the ball here. It's just a kind of a quick throw, just from the elbow joint. It's a very simple movement, not anything extremely complex. Um, this is, if we're looking at our learning domains, this would fall under our cognitive domain. As they get older, we're teaching them how to the mechanics of an actual throw. So, um, stepping, pointing, cocking the arm, following through with the throwing motion. And the good thing about that, or the thing that we want to stress here, is the fundamentals of the hows and whys that we throw, not necessarily worrying about accuracy and worrying about power and how far they can throw it. It's getting those fundamentals down. They move into kind of the elementary phase, which is, again, if we're talking about our affective or affective learning patterns. Now we want to really encourage them with trial and error, and using those experiences to determine how well they did. So you threw the ball, it didn't go where you wanted. Why not? Let's take a step back and, okay, maybe you pointed over here, your arm was here, your foot pointed to the right, your arm pointed to the left, and the ball went somewhere in the middle. Uh, but the idea is you want to reinforce their movements by looking at their outcomes and saying, okay, you did it this way, and this is how it happened, or this is what came of it. So now we want to change that around. And then they move finally into the mature stage, which is they're using, um, you know, more cues. They have the fundamentals down. They're getting the cocking, the arm, the throwing, the following through. They're getting all of their steps of throwing um, down, but now they're worried about getting accurate and getting the distance. So you're a pitcher trying to hit a target, or you're the center fielder trying to throw all the way into home base, trying to throw a runner out. Um, so it's putting those um, elements now in generating force. How much you're going to generate, how accurate you need to be, all of these different things, and that's more of a mature phase. And so when when we go back and we're looking at just the basics, that's very general. In the book, we'll talk more about getting the um, skills down that would lead us to that in terms of learning, different movement patterns. But what I want to stress here on the video, kind of some take-home points, is how we teach. And so, like I said, in that initial stage or in our cognitive stage of learning, in terms of motor development, what we really want to stress is the hows and the whys, as I said, why we're doing this. If I have an athlete that's going to be learning a squat, um, I don't want to just tell them the basic points of how to do a squat, demonstrate it, and say, go. I want them to make sure they understand not only the fundamentals of how to perform the squat, that's paramount to them executing it correctly, but at the same time, I want them to understand why I'm having them do the squat and what the squat will do for them, either athletically or if they're not an athlete, if they're just a client who just wants to get stronger, how that squat can make them stronger and more functional and more useful human being and improve their quality of life, because ultimately that's what it's all about. But that's in that cognitive stage. Then we get into the affective stage uh, of learning here, and what we really are looking for here is, again, using those trial and error processes, learning from your experiences, what worked, what didn't work, kind of filter out um, the good and the bad. Um, use your experiences of what you've done to further your understanding of the movement and to make those skills a little bit more autonomous, which is the third stage, the autonomous learning stage. So how do you coach someone in the autonomous stage, or what are we looking at there? Again, we're trying to get them to study their open and closed skills. So at this point, we know, or they know, how to perform the movement, and they know how to look at their successes or failures in terms of the outcomes of whatever their movement was, and go back and look at a skill they can improve on. So for example, if I'm trying to teach someone how to throw the ball, say a quarterback throwing a pass, and we're working on a particular skill, like trying to find the open receiver. So the quarterback takes a three-step drop and scans the receivers and picks the open one and throws the ball. Pretty straightforward. Well, um, what happens when the safety shifts over and then now is blocking where you wanted to throw the ball? So how can you shift that? That would be an open skill, making a decision while you're moving, versus a closed skill, which would be something that, say, you're hitting a golf ball off the tee. It's the ball is set on the tee. You've got your club in hand, and you line up and you get set, and then you perform the swing. And so that would be a closed skill. You're starting from that set position, and then the action happens. While an open skill is being able to adapt and move and shift while the play or while the movement has already started. So catching a ball, running a route and catching the ball, getting around a defender, or in baseball, running and catching a line drive and diving, making the throw, things like that are all open skills. So in that, when they get into that autonomous stage where the mechanics are more fundamental, they're not thinking in the middle of a game, okay, I got to cock my arm back, point, and throw. It's more of a what we're looking at there is more of a how can they adapt to what's going on around them, and still have the outcome, still produce the movement that we want. So the motor development chapter, will covers all sorts of things, much more than what we talked about here on the video. But the take-home point is learning how to teach them in those different stages, locomotor versus non-locomotor skills, the developmental fundamental skills, again, the early or the initial elementary and mature stages. And then last but not least, let me check my notes, make sure I'm not missing anything here. No, that is all. So, in summary, for motor development, you know, we can go back earlier in the chapter and we can look at things like uh, the definition of motor learning and things like that. But really, the main things are how to teach and how to coach those specific skills and what those specific skills are. And when we look at, I guess, there, how to, I guess the other thing is the factors that would influence your movement, and that could be your readiness, motivation, um, reinforcement, um, and just any individual differences that there might be. So, is the athlete ready to make that change? Um, and from a standpoint of coaching, that's where it can be tricky. You might have someone that's not really ready to make that change, and you can't force it. Uh, and if if you do, and that athlete's not ready to adapt or change, obviously you need to look somewhere else. That athlete isn't. You're not going to get 100% out of them. They're not ready to change. Just like with a personal training client, I can lay out a great plan for them to follow and get stronger or lose weight, whatever their plan is. But if they're not ready to change themselves, it's not going to happen. Motivation is much the same. Um, we need to properly motivate them, and that's a whole nother lecture that we'll talk about down the line, is how to motivate your clients and your students and things like that. But we need to be properly motivated, or they're not going to have success. And then there's certainly individual differences that people have that are going to affect their readiness and their motivation on top of that. But also, another thing we can look at is the reinforcement. So rewarding them when they do well, reinforcing the positives that they do. So when we're trying to teach a new skill and they perform it correctly, you give them credit for that. Make sure you point that out. With a younger child in elementary, PE style teaching, reinforcing those movement patterns so that they understand that what they did, um, they can associate that movement with good, or that movement with bad way to do it, or incorrect way to do it. And so that reinforcement will drive them to further that affective learning pattern or learning stage. Um, so anyways, chapter 9, or pardon me, chapter 5 there, in a real quick, succinct presentation, not fully developed there, but give you something to go with when you're